That's true. I've blocked one of the three Brian Ketterers because he was posting extremely racist shit too much, and I was like, man, fuck this guy. He's like,
just gonna block one of three.
I'm just gonna block one of three, and then if I see another one posting extremely racist, horrible shit, I'll also block them. Hey, it's Nicole.
Hey guys.
God's work.
Hey there.
Hi.
Wow, you guys have a pretty pro setup.
Yeah, this is my apartment recording room or living room, only room.
We've been recording here for years and years.
Great. You have a whole room.
What's that? Yeah. Oh well, no. I guess no. I have more than one. I have a bedroom also, and a kitchen. That's it's basically a separate room. It's a pretty nice apartment for Vancouver. Yeah. 3-ish rooms.
Pretty good.
Yeah. It's
like that Mitch Hedberg joke. You get to decide how many bedrooms you have in your apartment. This bedroom has an oven in it.
That's a pretty good Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah.
I could totally fit a bed in my kitchen. There's enough room. Like I could probably even do a double bed if I moved some stuff out of there. Like dedicated it.
See, in San Francisco, I've seen people rent out their garages.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people rent out the space under the stairs. People get creative here, for sure.
I briefly lived in a hallway to nowhere that was in like the back of someone's house, where like one of my walls was a door that they never opened because it went to like a common area that didn't like in the way the house was like split up, that it was a hallway to nowhere. So I just had like a really tiny bed in that hallway, and I slept there for a couple months and paid rent to live there like behind a curtain.
How much did you pay?
Oh, it was super cheap. It was like $300 or something.
Yeah. I remember when... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that sounds like Vancouver.
Yeah. I was just going to say, when I lived in Vancouver, in East Vancouver, we had a 3-story house with 13 people. And there was a walk-in closet at the top of the stairs that we called the Hobbit Hole that we rented out for $250.
I once had a place in Vancouver. It was a good deal at the time, but I was paying $250 for a real honest to God bedroom in a house.
Huh.
That was probably like 2011-ish.
Was it like an in-law?
No, it was just it was sort of a nepotistic thing though, because one of my roommates worked with a close friend of the guy who was like the landlord who lived upstairs, and he was like a like he English wasn't his first language, and he like was intimidated by renting but like wanted to make money off this extra suite, and so it was all like facilitated through people speaking Cantonese to each other when I wasn't there, and that was part of the reason it was cheap, is because he wasn't
hello
experienced with the marketplace. Who is that? Oh,
hey Isaac, how's it going?
Driving and streaming.
Real streaming hours.
Who up?
Are you in traffic? Are you gonna crash? Are you okay?
You good?
I am gonna crash. This is gonna be corroborated evidence.
Prove your incompetence that you were streaming while driving. Safe forever.
Texters versus dumb drivers.
I'm a very smart driver. That's why I'm on a Google Hangout.
You have Andrew Garr like reflexes. You can drive and do everything at the same time.
Well, I have no idea if this computer's microphone works. Can anyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, you've been here for a little while. I got up to look at what that name was. It says Matthew.
Hey there.
Matthew Milster.
I've listened to your all's podcast for so long, and never had the opportunity to interact with you before.
Hello, it's awesome. Matthew Pendleton, something like that. Matthew P. Which Matthew are we talking to?
Are there multiple Matthews?
Oh yeah, Matthew is actually the most popular boy's name.
God,
Matt,
you know, I think he was quite popular the year of my birth, but I didn't realize that would be the case for this group that you guys are attraction. But
I specifically had a mix-up regarding a Matthew like yesterday. Hugh told me that one of our friends, an anarchist from Winnipeg named Matthew, was coming to stay with us for the weekend. And I was like, oh, cool, Matthew, nice. And then it was like a totally different guy who was also an anarchist named Matthew from Winnipeg.
Just for the record, this guy's name was Mathieu.
Matthew.
Was it a disappointing mix-up, or like was this a better Matthew or
I've never met the other Matthew in person. This Matthew was very nice. So
He's a linguist who got into linguistics because he was into Noam Chomsky already.
I know a French Matthew who now owns a boat and he wants to sail to New Zealand, or like sail across the Pacific Ocean. He's been planning it for as long as I've known him. He was in Falls Creek recently in Vancouver, picked us up and drove us around on his boat.
Oh, nice.
I used to live in Vancouver a long time ago. Like, God, it's almost 10 years now. How long have you guys been living there?
6 years. Me, 6 years.
Yeah, I'm year 11 or 12 now. I think I came here in summer of 05. From good old Winnipeg, Manitoba, where I knew Matthews as far as the eye could see.
How'd you like Winnipeg?
How did I like? Well, I mean, it's okay. It was the only thing I knew at the time.
I mean, he moved to the most expensive city in all of Canada. He probably didn't like Winnipeg.
Yeah, it was a family move, so I didn't get to choose, but I did temporarily move back once, intending to stay for a while, but I very, very quickly learned that Winnipeg is a wretched place that should be scratched off the map and returned to Earth.
I visited Winnipeg for the first time like last week, 2 weeks ago.
How was it?
It was okay. I was only there to drive to the airport and then fly out of it, because I lost my passport in Minneapolis, and so I had to drive across the border with my friends instead of catching my original flight.
Oh man.
Yeah, it worked out pretty good though. At least I had people driving to Canada so I could get back into my country.
Aren't those like more central provinces? Aren't they like really pretty though? Don't they have like a lot of nature and stuff you can see? That's one thing I'm really lacking here in Chicago, and that's always something that seemed very appealing about Canada to me.
They're very flat, very prairie-like.
Some hills.
There's occasional like bits of forested land or like cool national parks and stuff, but it's a lot of like, yeah, really just like barren prairie land. Maybe barren's the wrong word, but it's not bad. It's not lush and green like BC. BC is just forests and mountains and like beautiful. But
in Manitoba, it's fertile arable land, but it's all growing canola. So it's all growing canola and mustard seeds and just wheat.
Very yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's
But if you've been to Champaign, Illinois, that's pretty much what the prairie is like in Canada.
Okay, I hear ya.
Yeah, I'm from Champaign, so like I was born there.
Midwest too.
Yeah.
It's a great name for a city, Champaign.
Champagne. Yeah, it's also not spelled the way that champagne is spelled, which is like confusing. But
is it like champagne, like a fake pain, like it's a sham?
It's PAIGN.
Friends and real pain for my sham friends.
Oh,
Yeah.
Fall Out Boy. Yeah.
Where we are, though, is forested and beautiful in Ontario, and it's not full of stupid mountains blocking the view, just saying.
Yeah, the mountains are the worst. If we could get rid of them, we would in a second.
Flatten that shit.
Hey, Matthew,
At least
where are you living now?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm giving away too much of my personal information. I can tell you about what it was like when I was there in Vancouver.
If you live in an undisclosed location, I can totally respect that.
It's, it's just a typical place in America.
Military outpost.
Where in America? Give like a
Actually, there are no military outposts nearby.
Are there
Well,
seasons?
I'm on the East Coast. But when I was living in Vancouver,
Wait, where the hell are you that there's no military outposts on the East Coast? That whole fucking coast is militarized.
Well, you can kind of get away from that. Well, I guess it depends. It's relative on what you think a big distance is. But anyway.
We're not trying to give we shouldn't give 20 questions until we figure out exactly where Matthew lives. Because it's an undisclosed location.
I need the GPS coordinates.
Well, so when I was there, I was at the edge of Chinatown, which I think maybe is gone now.
Oh, no, it's still there. I actually used to live up until last year, like in that area.
Yeah. Well, my first week when I moved there, I didn't know anybody there. I was going there to work in a kitchen, like at a hotel there. And I had like a couple of days where there was just nothing to do and I didn't know anyone. And so I went out and I was like, oh, it's British Columbia, Vancouver. It's supposed to be a place where there's great marijuana. And so I'll go out and I'll get some. And I went out onto Hastings, which is right near there, because when you go and read about
just like started walking out onto Hastings and you were like, does anybody have any marijuana?
No, it was totally fine. A guy came right up to me.
No, yeah, they will just come right up to you. Yeah.
And like, okay, how much is it going to be? And he told me this or whatever. And I said, oh, I've only got half of it. And can you give me that? And I just put it in my pocket, and I didn't know how the police were or how it was there at all. This was just my first couple of days there. So I just went back to the apartment, didn't know anybody, go upstairs, sun is kind of setting, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to smoke a little weed and watch Canadian television. And I get about 30 minutes into watching The Simpsons, and I just feel really weird and just not great. I had no idea what was going on. And so I flipped on the lights, and I looked at this pot, and there are these white chunks in it. And I kind of look at them a little more carefully, and I realize that my first time getting stoned in Vancouver, where I know nobody, I just smoked crack. And I'm like, holy fuck. And that was the beginning of my next 2 years there.
Wow. Did you try
yeah, I wouldn't buy weed on Hastings. Well, I mean, now it's like you go to one of the stores every 3 blocks, but even before that, yeah, it's not the best.
That's really bad luck, because I mean, most of the weed I've ever seen here has been crack free.
But Matt,
I thought I should have paid more for
did
that.
you like
So
it?
I'm surprised.
I didn't hear what anyone just said.
What did you like the crack, Matt? Was it good crack?
No, it was very unpleasant.
That's unfortunate.
Should we start grilling like Sean and Aaron with like debate questions or not?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Cultural Marxism, go.
Oh no,
it's not a question.
Do we have any like Siavash tier people in here who are like any conspiracy nuts hanging by the wayside?
I don't think so. None of them donate to our show. They should donate to the show.
Yeah, they
but
really
should. They don't.
They should also tell their friends to donate, but for some reason they don't.
Also welcome Issa, I saw, and Stefan. I don't think either of you have talked, but you're here, so hello.
Hello. I'm definitely here.
Hi.
Something I was thinking about today, something that Nicole said to me recently about the title of our show, Seriously Wrong, and like the concept of wrongness. I'm kind of curious to like pick people's brains on how they sort of feel about like the concept of wrongness and like the different things that are like in this idea of like sort of like having the room to be wrong so you can change your position and like retain your dignity through that, which is something I feel is like missing.
Is that the original concept that you intended when you came up with the name?
What does it mean? Are you making like meta ethical considerations, or are you just kind of thinking of wrongness in a consequentialist framework?
I have no idea which of those applies to what I'm thinking.
I was just kind of wondering what you were thinking about when you came up with the name.
Oh yeah, well it was sort of, it came from that sort of idea. Well, originally what happened was I used to change my like Facebook name a lot, and to like just different random things like
Bobson Dugnut.
Yeah, like Bobson. Well, it was more stuff like Landlord J Plutocrat and Unfathomable Crisis was my Facebook name for like 8 months. But then one of them that I changed it to was Seriously Wrong, like first name seriously, last name wrong. And I thought it was just really funny to go on Facebook and be that, especially because I was like getting in internet debates with strangers all the time. And that's sort of like the genesis of where the name came. And then when we were talking about naming the show, I already had a Facebook page set up that was called Seriously Wrong. And
yeah, I think it had like 300 likes, and we were like, that's a good name for a podcast. We should just snag those likes already pre-existing, pop them into the podcast.
Yeah, and I'd been posting like memes
Hi,
and
Hannah.
political stuff there.
Hey.
You in an airport?
Hello. I am at the airport. I thought I'd be able to be checked in by now, but I'm not.
Is this a U.S. or Australian airport?
This is Dallas Fort Worth Airport.
Oh, that's why.
Oh, Dallas!
That airport sucks. I hate
Yeah,
that.
it's hideous.
Well, there's two airports in Dallas, and one of them doesn't suck.
But Dallas International is also bad. Yeah, I know.
But I haven't been able to check in.
Godspeed and well wishes.
Thanks, man.
Good luck. Were you? How long are you in the States for?
This is it. I'm done. I'm in the States for another like 4 hours.
How long were you there for?
3 weeks.
3 weeks. Oh shoot. Were you just in Texas or?
No. I've only been in Texas since. When did I get here? I don't know. Maybe the 13th or 14th.
How was the rodeo?
It was so good, actually. I never would have thought I would have enjoyed something like that, but I had a really good time. But my friend asked me to not laugh so loud at the military songs.
Oh my god. What's your favorite part about the States?
I don't know, cheap beer. I like.
Can't complain about that.
I like all of it. I just like how interesting it is. I like that there's a lot of variety. I feel like there's not a lot of variety in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's definitely like multiculturalism, but as for diversity, like within culture, there's not. I don't know if I'm making sense there. I don't feel like there's a lot of that going on.
There's far more diversity in here than probably out there.
Well, there's a lot more landmass too, so just like more.
There's a lot of diversity on the coast.
Australia's pretty big, but there's not a lot going on. Like you're never like that far from the nearest like town or city, but in Australia you're like always at least 8 hours from the next major city, wherever you are.
You're closer to snakes than the city.
Yeah, you generally are pretty close to a snake. Like.
Are the spider sizes in Australia? Are they rightfully feared? Because that's my big hang up with like going.
Yeah,
to
Isaac
Australia.
Sports just being really lucky here.
Like one of those fuckers. I would hate that.
So, I mean, where I live, the only spiders that I really get are like huntsmen, but they're fine. They get pretty big, but
that sounds bad. I'm from the Midwest, where like the biggest spider is like the size of a fucking quarter. So.
Okay, well, huntsmen get pretty big. They can get as big as your hand, but they eat mosquitoes, so it's a win-win. Like it's.
I don't know about that.
Spiders, I guess.
But my cats also get them, so it's I find a lot of dead ones, more dead ones than I see alive ones.
I think it might have been Corey about like spiders being like really neighborly. I don't know if that was him or someone else, but
Australians are neighborly?
No, as
spiders.
Spiders being neighborly.
Oh,
like,
spiders.
Science spiders. Neighborly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fine. I don't mind having them in my house as long as like they're not on my body, particularly when I'm not wearing clothes, and then
right.
don't be on my bed also. And then other than that, I'm happy to coexist.
That's my favorite place for spiders is on my body when I'm not wearing clothes.
That must be your inspiration for a new episode.
I have like pretty low standards for for what I expect from spiders. You know, that's.
I love the attitude of Australians when they're talking about spiders and snakes. They're just like very like, you know, like that's just the way things are.
There's just not that many of them. I don't know. Like, I just don't see it as a big deal. Like, it's not like I'm like constantly on the lookout for spiders. And I can tell you how many times I've seen a snake in the wild in my life. I can remember like one in my backyard when I was a kid, which I quite liked.
Wait, where are you based in Australia?
In Brisbane.
Oh, okay.
There's not poisonous snakes there. Like, it's not.
I thought maybe you were like in an inner city or something.
Yeah, I am. I live in a city. That's exactly the other part of it, is I live in a city, so I don't see much wildlife in general.
And there's Corey.
Hi.
Hi, Corey.
Oh,
Hey, Corey.
Hi, Corey.
I'm at work right now.
Is this part of your work? Are you working?
Yes.
Well, they can't fire me as a union.
Yeah, but he's also.
No, I'm not
Can
protected by
dox
the
you?
union.
Just
Also, basically all I'm doing right now is setting up tablets.
Oh, you can do that and other things at the same time.
Oh, most definitely.
Thank you.
I have an appointment coming up like really soon. I gotta figure out when I gotta be off.
Ooh, leg.
That's a nice leg right there. That's a nice great man.
Yeah, you can enjoy all the people.
In the fashion. That right there, that's some spring Texas fashion.
Is anybody else having a hard time hearing him?
Yeah, I can't hear it.
Isaac gets quiet. He had a few decent sounding moments, but most of the time he's pretty quiet. I don't know what happens because it seems like it cuts in and out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I am talking on speaker right now. I'm in my car, so that probably
We can tell.
had
Yeah.
to do with it. Yeah. I figured. So I'm trying to speak loudly and enunciate my words and stuff. Can you guys hear me all right now?
It's all right. It kind of works.
Great. I'm glad I could achieve mediocrity.
I'm sure that you talked about it when you first opened the thing, but I love the new setup. It's very flash. Really feels like we're actually hanging out.
Yeah, this is where we record. This is what it looks like.
Yeah, fucking amazing.
Wow, that's where the
Better
magic
than I could
happens.
have hoped.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is this your house, Sean?
Oh, no, this is Aaron's house.
Yeah.
Although I
Is it?
live
Is
next
that your
door
house
now. Like
It's beautiful. Oh.
I like that weird looking mushroom lamp.
Yeah. Oh, it's not a lamp. It's just like a mushroom statue.
plain old decorative ceramic mushroom.
There's also a Buddha here.
You know. Oh yeah, I got one of those.
A Buddha with a head or a Buddha with no head?
So I want to give an opportunity for people to introduce themselves if they haven't spoken yet. I mean, some of the people here I know pretty well and talk to frequently, and other people I know less. Probably harder to jump in if you don't already feel like. So feel free to jump in, fellas and/or ladies.
Hello. I'm Stefan.
Oh, hey, is Stefan?
Hi, Stefan.
To
Hi,
European
Stefan.
listeners. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, we can hear you. Your video sort of flickered in and out there, but.
All right, fair. Yeah, it's going towards 11 now. What's the time in the Americas?
2:30 p.m. here where we are.
All right, thanks.
It's 5:30 in Ontario, Canada.
Regular Canada.
Regular Canada. I see.
Wow.
Not really. 11 o'clock here in the
Believe that
Midwest.
Eastern chauvinism.
Yeah.
You
I
guys,
just said there's 18 million people here.
You also drink milk from a bag.
That's true.
It's the best way to drink milk.
It's not the best way. It spills all over the floor.
You're from Kansas.
Wait, there's milk in a bag? I don't even know this.
Oh yeah.
Really? Oh fuck yeah! Here, hang on.
Yeah, go get the milk.
Is all milk in a bag? Do you have an option? Are there cartons
it's pretty
too?
much all in a bag, but you can get like a box milk, like a, what do you call that? Like 2 liters?
Carton? Yeah.
Yeah, carton.
Yeah.
Milk.
But no plastic jugs.
I don't think so. It might be coming in, but yeah, that's kind of like not an.
What? Are you kidding me? That is absolutely.
So this goes in a pitcher, and then you like get a pair of scissors and you just snip the side.
So you have to have a
Seems
pitcher.
like so much work.
Yeah, you have to have a pitcher. Or you could just, just tie up a
Drink
bag
it
of milk and put it in the fridge.
Pitcher's like $1.
Use a tie or something.
No, it doesn't take that long to drink this much milk.
Just stick a straw in it like a Capri Sun.
Why? Why?
That's so fucked up.
What do you guys think? Should you drink this whole bag of milk right now?
Do it.
I ate so much chocolate, it wouldn't be the worst time.
Make chocolate milk in your belly.
That's disgusting.
Oh sweet, the view from the Dallas airport. That's
I'm putting this away.
You're welcome.
You go to the Dallas airport.
He's just shoving the milk in her face.
I just don't want to stand there like looking at the board with a camera on my face. It feels too indulgent.
Everyone's judging you. Everyone around you is
Yeah, I know. Well, I've been standing up and like pacing back and forward a fair bit, so I'm fairly certain that they think I'm suspicious. Maybe.
You should definitely talk about that more loudly.
Okay.
Bye, Roman.
If you think that'll help.
Yeah, definitely will. Definitely talk about like armaments and explosives.
I was thinking at some point, like it's now 4:30, so it's getting pretty close to me wanting to get up and get aggressive about checking in.
Yeah, start a fight with like one of the flight attendants.
Yeah, that was basically what I was going to go for.
Fuck yeah.
It's just not noticeable. The hangout where I got arrested. My visa lasts for another ages, another like week and a half. So
hey, if they pour your ass, it's a free ticket home. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I've already paid for this one though, so it's a bit like I don't know if I get.
You can get a refund.
I don't know if it'll be as good.
And then get deported.
Can you get free booze on a deported flight? Like, is it like limited privileges?
I don't know.
Deportation party flights.
Stefan, where do you live besides Europe? I can't place your accent.
Right, so I live in Germany now, but I'm from Austria, and I spent 3 years in the UK, and I lived some time in Egypt. So, been
cool.
all over the place. Yeah, I live on the Belgian border, so like the very west of Germany right now, or like northwest, sort of.
Right.
Yeah. You said you were in Germany?
Yeah, I went once with my family. Right after I graduated high school, we visited like some of my dad's relatives who lived there and drove around. I don't remember all the places we went. It was a lot of like smaller towns and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
I did
I'm just here since a year. It's a bit of a weird. Oh hey. So it's a bit of a weird.
Do you live in, Stefan?
I live in Germany now, but I'm from Austria, so it's a bit of a weird feeling to be like foreign but speaking the same language. So like half a foreigner. It's some strange things.
Yeah. You said you live near Belgium.
Yeah. So on the three countries corner. So it's called Aachen, which is like right on the corner of Belgium, Germany, and the Netherlands.
You'd be good. I'm getting her payments for her.
Do people hear me?
Your first month in April.
Yeah, kind of.
Deposits. You'll be
Okay.
You'll be covered. So just come by anytime.
Some work calls.
Oh, I think that's Roman Pocket joining the hangout.
Oh, is you right?
Fantastic.
Maybe I can meet him.
Roman Pocket joined us.
Between you and Angela.
You can hear him talking at work to his coworkers.
I'm sorry. 6:38. That's between you and Angela.
Awkward.
No, he's gone.
I kicked him out.
Give Roman a raise. Give Roman a raise.
So, Hannah and Corey, this is perfect time for you guys to make your love match. It's going to be a good green card marriage, I hear. And
oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Actually, I was about to say. You didn't forget. Don't be a shit.
He's just bashful.
I was. It's not really good enough. But I was actually about to say I'm gonna go cunts and start a fight. I think it's been long enough.
Well, enjoy your fight.
But you have an amazing hangout, and I'll be in touch, Corey.
Perfect.
Safe travels.
Enjoy your flight.
Bye, Hannah.
Bye.
Make us proud.
America, America.
Now I wish I was in Texas. Fuck.
Yeah.
What
I
game you
don't.
playing, Hugh?
Hmm?
What game you playing over there?
Oh, Europa Universalis.
Nice.
Have I ever told you I used to live with an anarchist who was accused of blowing up a bank, and he had a secret love of these video games, and he would always quietly be like, "Don't tell anybody I'm a colonizer." I won't tell you who it was.
You know, I've heard good things about that game, but I took one look at all of its menus and decided I wanted to do something else with my life.
Yeah, it's a big time investment, but it helps me turn my brain off.
There's like, I was amazed with the amount of menus in that game. It's really incredible the degree of menu innovation that the creators of that video game. Like the menus are just endless and just.
Are you sure you're not thinking Crusader Kings?
Oh no, I'm thinking Europa Universalis. That's the one that I paid money for and then never played.
Oh no.
Those
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't endorse paying money for video games. Or anything, unless you absolutely have to.
But Hugh, don't artists have to get paid?
Yeah, but that's what universities are for.
They pay artists?
They pay us.
I guess that's their mistake.
Why is everyone not like us? That's the problem.
Don't be like us. It's competition in our very narrow job market.
Very, very narrow job market of lefty comic distribution and production.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm working on this contract right now for intellectual property rights, and I gave it to Hugh to look over, and he like screamed at me that I was gonna get fleeced because I wasn't advocating for myself enough.
Well, like giving away your intellectual property right.
Oh yeah, intellectual property theft.
It's true. I actually kind of don't care. All our comics are available, like all of the ones that we did are available for free on the internet. Sorry, anyone who paid for a copy of the beat.
Wait, Sean, I'm curious. How do you reconcile those two positions? Namely that intellectual property is theft and also artists should get paid.
When I said artists should get paid, I was ironically saying what everyone always said to me every single day I was in the Pirate Party. But I think artists getting paid at the point of sale isn't the only way for artists to get paid. That's the short version of it.
What would be like your optimal system for that?
Well, like, I mean, if you, for example, like a lot of, I'm going to use the pharmaceutical example first, and then I'll pivot from that. Just so in pharmaceuticals, the majority of like life-saving drugs are produced because of government grants, not because of like capitalist investors being like, figure out a cure for this. They get like grants from like medical institutions and stuff like that. And then those same states and countries pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to get access to the intellectual property they help seed. That money that you save every year, like, so for example, here in like the province of BC, because we have like partial pharmacare for low income people, we pay like hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to pay for drugs that were already subsidized in the first place by our government and other governments. You could just like reallocate that money that we pay into buying all these drugs into just paying people to like innovate and do stuff in the first place. So like for the example of I don't know, like comic artists, it's less of a moral, like it's less of that same like moral need for that like innovation and protecting people.
Sorry, can I interrupt for a second? I think Roman wants back in. He was commenting on the Facebook group. So unblock him or whatever you were doing.
Oh, I didn't know that was a permanent. I thought I just kicked him.
Ban him.
So like for musicians, for example, if we like the vast majority of musicians that the vast majority of money that musicians make is from like merchandise and touring, not album sales and access to their music. That typically goes to middlemen. So we can look at all the specific examples and all the different areas of intellectual property and see like what's the purpose that it's supposed to serve, what is it actually like in practice, and how can we reallocate those funds to make sure that people have basic living support while they follow their passions in art or whatever else.
In the specific case of music, Sean, do you see that as a positive change in the industry, that now artists are making most of their money off of merch and touring rather than albums?
That's always been the case. That's not a change. So like from the start of the modern popular music industry, it's always been that artists have signed these repressive intellectual property contracts that give the vast majority of their revenue to middlemen and producers and advertisers and et cetera, only getting a very small amount of it. But as far as I'm aware, that's like with the modern music industry, when it comes to like 8 tracks, tapes, CDs, it's just always been the case.
I guess the way that I had, or at least the way it had been represented to me was, growing up, I saw the whole Napster thing and Metallica freaking out about that, and all these other kind of large A-list artists freaking out about.
I'm pretty sure later Metallica starved to death, so that is.
Got what was,
but it just seems to be, from my very cursory surface level understanding of the music industry, that artists were making a lot more money from album sales before the advent of file sharing and illegal music streaming.
That it might be true that the artists that were very extremely famous, like Metallica, were making more money before that. But I believe since the advent of the internet, the overall music revenue has went up, but it's more distributed. And there's also studies that show that people who are like prolific pirates who listen to a lot of music, whether that's through legitimate or illegitimate means, spend more money on music.
Oh, that's totally plausible to me. I mean, I'm not trying to rail against music piracy at all. I have like a terabyte hard drive full of that shit. But
and I appreciate. I don't feel attacked by it because I know all this stuff really well, and it's just No, I argued about it for like several years.
Seriously wrong, guys.
Very passionately. But yeah, I think overall the amount of money that's being generated through creative work has went up since the age of Napster, and it's harder to be. I mean, it's still not as hard as it should be, but it's harder to be sort of a middleman and rent seeker than it used to be.
Well, that's good then.
And also, I mean, I see stuff like Spotify and like Google Play Music and stuff like that, where you can stream access to it or pay like a service that partially goes towards the artist. I mean, I think stuff like this is positive, and if stuff like this, if you make appealing legal ways for people to access content, they won't resort to piracy. I think piracy is just a stopgap measure from like a malformed society that treats their knowledge incorrectly. And the closer we get to treating knowledge correctly, then the less need there will be for piracy. And also, like, it sucks that the Pirate Bay has like pop-up ads and pop-under ads and stuff like that, and putting cookies on your computer and shit like that. That's all a result of like a black market for information. That, yeah, I don't know. I think we can effectively replace the need for piracy with effective libraries. So, like, for example, at my local library, there's only 5 copies of ebooks, and if 5 people take out copies of an ebook, they can't lend out any more copies of that ebook until someone returns their ebook. It's the craziest thing in the world. Like, you put an ebook on my computer, it doesn't. I can personally just start copying and pasting it, being like, look, 20 of them, 30 of them. It's just maddening that the intellectual property keeps us from sharing information with each other, especially because I think it should be matched with a sort of cultural change in how we see knowledge and where artists are paid from. Like, for example, I think subsidized housing for artists specifically is a great idea. Like, this is where we house our artists, and they produce enough. Or this guy only produces 1 painting every 10 years, but he's really old, so we'll let him stay in there. I don't know.
What if we just housed everyone, though?
Now that is mad.
What the fuck is going on?
Are you getting robbed?
Is that is Morgan here?
Yeah, I am. What? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you see me?
I can see you.
Hi, is that Corey?
Hi. Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And is that Isaac Schwartz?
Isaac Schwartz is in his car, and he's now he's not in the car.
Now he's talking, but the mic's off for me.
Were we gonna do a round of introductions? I can't remember.
Yeah, right. I mean, sort of.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean,
I don't know what your process is for these hangouts.
I'm Morgan, longtime hangouter. I went to the one that happened.
There's a beam of light right now. Might have to move your laptop over.
Is that what you think it is?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's it. I think it's the sun.
Yeah, I said I'm being depicted as a beam of light here.
Oh, yeah, move your laptop. Oh, do you want me? I see. You want me to put my laptop over here?
Yeah.
Issa, you have a video now. You were here for a while without video.
Yeah, my shit's kind of broken, so it wasn't really working, but it's kind of working now.
It's working now.
Yeah, it's a high quality video stream.
Where's that Danish guy?
I switched to my girlfriend's laptop, so.
Yep hasn't shown up this one, Morgan.
Oh, that was so funny last time. He like showed it. Yep came back. He was like from the bar or something, and it's like the middle of the night there.
Yeah, it was like, super like middle of the night. he was so nice.
4 in the morning, where he was just the most positive, drunk Scandinavian guy I've ever met.
Listen, guys, I love your podcast. I listen to it every week. I just saw this posted on Facebook, and I rushed home from the bar. And now I'm so excited to be here.
That guy's awesome.
Yeah, he was awesome. Can I ask, what is the seriously wrong reading syllabus for this year? I'm gonna have more time to read, and I want some recs.
Oh, I also need some recs. I just bought a bunch of like the standard kind of anarchist books, and I'm trying to figure
old
out which
standards,
one first.
the good old standard,
the old
bread
standards. Bread book, Emma Goldman, some stuff like that.
Well, I'll share the 3 books I'm reading right now, and I recommend them all. There's one called The Entrepreneurial State, which is about the origins of innovation in like state subsidy rather than the free market, which I found really interesting so far, although it's a bit dry. I'm also reading Janet Beal's biography of Bookchin called Ecology or Catastrophe, which I found about halfway through. And in particular, I was really interested to hear about like the history of the Communist Party of America's like party line as it changed over time, and like how it factored into Bookchin's disenfranchisement with communism, where they would like reverse positions like polarization, and he'd be like, I don't agree with either of these positions, but they just switched in the exact opposite direction in this crazy way. So that's pretty good. And the other one that I'm reading is David Graeber's upcoming book, Bullshit Jobs, which will come out in May, which I managed to score an advance copy of, and it's like really, really good. Really, really interesting.
Yeah, I like David Graeber.
I have a funny story about the Communist Party of the USA.
Yeah.
We have the time real quick.
Yep.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So, good friend of mine, Sophia Burns, you may have read some articles that she's posted. Apparently, part of her like political evolution was like, so she decided that she was a communist and she wanted to get involved. And this was like, she was living in like Albuquerque or something in New Mexico. And so she just started, Googling around, and she was like, oh, Communist Party of New Mexico. Cool. I'm gonna be a part of that. So she like sent an email to like the central thing, like, hey, can you get me connected with people in New Mexico? And then she never heard back. And then like a year and a half or so later, she was talking to someone, and I can't remember like what the series of events that like got to this point, but basically it ends with her finding out that she's the leader of the Communist Party of New Mexico because she's the only person there.
Awesome. That's so cool.
When did that happen?
Awesome.
Do what?
When did that happen?
That was a few years ago. You'd have to ask her for the whole story, because it's like she tells it way better than I did.
And I guess she didn't really succeed at the Albuquerque insurrection.
No, she did not. Now she's just doing stuff in Seattle.
I think I mentioned this in DC too. I forget where, but like this guy who was a grad student when I was in college was like, he was part of the Radical Communist Party, and he was like attempting to organize, and he this was his term. He called them.
Do you mean Revolutionary Communist Party?
What's that?
You mean Revolutionary Communist Party?
Yeah. So he was part of the Bobavakian cadre.
Bobavakian.
You wanted to.
I think it's pronounced cult, not cadre.
But like actually, he
Does
wanted
anyone follow Avakian googling Avakian on Twitter?
No.
Oh, it's fucking great. It's just Bob Avakian, like what he hypothetically might punch into Google at any particular time.
Oh God.
It's pretty good. Like for International Women's Day, it was like Bob Avakian, year of glorious worldwide women's struggle.
I like this. The most recent pinned tweet is Bob Avakian is the farthest thing imaginable from a cult leader. People should praise him, wear t-shirts with his face on them, and quote him extensively. Yeah, that sounds about like this person I was talking about. Anyway, he had a bit of a third worldist flavor, and he wanted to organize Mexican peasants. And then his stated goal to me was to encircle LA with his like peasant army and like carve it
out. Oh man, yeah. That's a really there's sort of an interesting overlap between sort of like the third world, like the centralizing of like the third world proletariat as the essential sort of revolutionary force, and then also being like privileged person in North America being like, yes, I'll use them like my pawns to overthrow society.
Yeah, it's like when I used to set up these like elaborate set piece battles with my Star Wars micro machines. And I'd be like, then the AT-ATs come out and they surround the rebel base, and then that's it, you know, or whatever. I would have some like this like huge diorama that covered like half my yard with all my micro machines.
The only true revolutionary force is the Jawas. We have to organize the Jawas against the AT-ATs.
I don't know. I would argue it's the Tusken Raiders. They're clearly or what are they?
It's the Ewoks.
Time for some factional splitting, you guys.
I'm Rebel Alliance left tendency. I called it. No one else gets to have that one. Or true Rebel Alliance left tendency.
True leftist form is like claiming something and then not letting anybody else subscribe to it.
Yeah.
Hey, Isaacson Doris.
Yeah, and I'm on my computer now.
Hey, Isaac.
So clear.
So crisp.
Yeah.
What are people besides Sean reading right now?
I'm reading this book called Confront and Conceal by this guy, David Sanger, who is a very mainstream, like, foreign policy type. Like, he writes for Foreign Policy magazine.
Okay.
But it's about, like, Obama's or kind of use and expansion of, like, wartime powers and kind of the expansion of the definition of war under his administration. It was really interesting. Go through a lot of cyber conflicts between the U.S. and China and Russia, and that's with like China other forms of power.
David Sanger. What's his pedigree?
I don't know.
Where did he go to school?
He's extremely, you know, beltway. I think he has like, you know, a JD from Georgetown or a PhD from Harvard or something like that.
Yep, that's what it looks like.
Yep.
I think there's a value in reading a lot of that stuff. Me
too. And another author like that I really like, a guy named David Rothkopf. He has a book with a kind of corny title called Power Inc., but it's really, really good. It goes through kind of the history of the development of the corporation and how its original inception kind of depended on the support from state actors and how corporate power has continually depended on kind of that interplay between the public and private sectors over the centuries. Really interesting.
Yeah, I like things that are more straightforward histories of like an institution. And one book I'm interested in reading next year was, I can't remember the exact name of it. It's in my Goodreads account. I'll fish it out in a second. But it was basically a history of business schools and how the ideology undergirding like the message of business schools changed from the 1930s, where they were more like civic oriented, because it was like a head of a corporation that negotiated like the Kellogg-Briand Pact, and then we go from that to like the 1950s, where it's more just like naked self-interest and obliteration of labor unions. I find that whole transformation really interesting, and I think looking at it from the perspective of how business school ideologies changed is really could be really rewarding.
I would be very interested in that because I guess one of my I graduated with a business degree. One of the main things as kind of from a leftist perspective that I took from that is, it's very interesting kind of seeing that ideological perspective, the neoliberal perspective, where there is kind of, this total market focus and this assumption that what's profit maximizing is inherently good, if not explicit, then latent. So I wouldn't have even thought from having graduated last year that it would have ever been anything different. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, let me find it. What are other people reading? Oh, sorry, I cut you off. Whoever the hell said something.
That was me. I was going to ask what the Kellogg-Briand Pact was.
The Kellogg-Briand Pact, I think it was like in 1931 or 32, but it was this treaty signed by a bunch of different countries to outlaw war.
Which outlaw war? Is that what you said?
To outlaw war.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Worked well.
Yeah, so it did work out. There's no enforcement mechanism, right? But at least in terms of like being a reflection of aspirations of the 1930s, I think it's really interesting. And on top of that, I think it was, I forget whether it was Kellogg or Breon, but one of the two was like the head of a major corporation or a bank. Like he was from the private sector. And to think that like corporations would be more, at least some of them, would be more civic-minded in that way in that era. It's like I literally could not imagine that happening now. Like a corporation taking a political stance that isn't explicitly self-interested. I mean, it's also self-interested to not want war, right? You can make more money, depending on your business sector. But it's like there's also a very obvious altruistic like motivation there that I don't see in really any corporate activities anymore. Certainly not negotiating treaties.
I mean, Lockheed Martin sponsors pride parades.
That was good. In terms of reading, just to endorse. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Have you guys heard of the Golden Arches theory of conflict prevention? Apparently, there's never been two countries that both have McDonald's in their borders fighting war against each other.
I don't. Does Pakistan really not have a McDonald's?
It does now, but it didn't when it had a war against India.
Interesting.
Okay, a Taliban thing. Like it's not about insurgency within any countries. It's like full-out interstate war that was considered.
Yeah.
So the Taliban in Pakistan would not count.
I remember reading some examples that like contradict that theory, but maybe it was insurgency.
Yeah, I think so.
Less likely to doesn't mean like it'll never happen. Just
Well, that's kind of like somebody from The Economist come up with that. That sounds like an Economist thing.
Yeah, they have a Big Mac index.
Yeah, no, I think it's David Friedman who came up with that. Yeah, so that's one of these neoliberal libertarian people. Yeah.
I wonder if there's anything else like that we could find that's just like sort of a coincidence, but we could use to build our ideological utopian narrative. Like any two countries that had universal basic income have never went to war, or like,
that's probably definitely true.
Currently true.
A lot of
countries probably
have that. Countries.
I'm kind of I want to find an exception to this. I mean, already it's like it's kind of ridiculous, right? And the fact that countries with
I guess the idea is that the moment two countries have McDonald's in their borders means that they are so economically integrated that it sort of hurts themselves if they would attack someone else because they're so dependent on each other. That's the theory behind it.
I mean, but also the fact that like we covertly undermine countries sort of like makes the fact of whether or not we declare war or not a little bit hollow, right? So it's like, it's the same problem with democratic peace theory.
Yeah,
but I still really want to find an exception. I'm kind of shocked that there isn't one.
Yeah.
Hey, did you guys see McDonald's flipped its M upside down to support women all around the world?
Yeah.
Anybody got any hot takes on?
Is that a constant thing now, or just for the one day?
I think it was like one restaurant for one day. It didn't happen in Vancouver. I didn't see any upside down M's.
Yeah, and that seems to imply that usually it stands for men.
I hadn't thought of it.
Well, like they say, every other day is International Men's Day, so we just had the one, the one flip.
What do you think about the idea of corporations spearheading progressive causes? Do you think that's ever happened?
Yeah, it happens all the time.
I don't think they're spearheading. I think they might be like hopping on some bandwagons sometimes when they think it would be beneficial to their profits, their bottom line. But
where's Siavash when you need him?
Like we could invite him if you guys want, but I don't. I don't think that'd be good.
I spent a lot of time talking to that guy, and
it'll all become about him if we add him. So.
Yeah,
just like everything, and also, and also, just not being able to recognize when someone has disagreed with you, it's just the most infuriating thing in the world.
I think it's a tactic. I think he can recognize, but he doesn't want to.
I'm losing faith that there's
He doesn't acknowledge when there's a disagreement in a conversation.
No, well, he does, because he'll be like, "Oh, you're stupid, you're crazy, you're blind, blah 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 blah," and then you say something that I guess is not confrontational enough that when he scans it and doesn't read it, he notices that you're contradicting him and undermining his argument. And then it'd be like, now you understand. And it's like, I just said the same thing I've been saying the whole time.
Or like the next thread is like, now that we've all realized this thing, let's move on to my next point. Like, well, we didn't really all realize that. Or you're saying something we never disagreed with to begin with and ignoring the actual disagreement. Oh, well.
I think the smoothest move is just to steal someone's argument, not acknowledge that they were right, but to steal it and then pretend that they were disagreeing with you.
Yeah, and just gaslight them about what the beginning of your conversation was like.
I don't want to steal some of Vash's arguments. He's like pro-eugenics and like that's probably the most appalling position he has. I forget what else he stands for. He like self-identifies as a leftist, but that he's also pro-eugenics and, like, against any cut like women being outside the home or something.
You're asking for coherency and consistency from someone that is clearly like incapable of it. So
yeah. He also explicitly acknowledged. So this everyone here, there's this group called Smart versus Dumb, but it changes its name all the time to like, you know, Smart Landlords versus Dumb Tenants or all these different things. It's sort of like an edgelord debate group with a decent amount of leftists in it, run by Ed Miller, who's
friend of the show.
Yeah, friend of the show. But like in Saivash, he's been one of the prime dumbs of that group.
Team dumb.
But he just acknowledged, like yesterday, he's like, yes, there is no consistency to my position, and I make it up as I go along. But that's because it's not pre-programmed. It's not pre-programmed by the leftist agenda. And it's like, well, my ideas aren't pre-programmed either. I just only say them if I can back them up, and I think they're real. It's like I'm not like reading from a script or something. It's just like this idea that there's a binary between like either you must accept all your pre-programmed ideas from on high, or you should have no consistency or like metric of validity before you consider something. There's nothing in between. That guy really like he gets under my skin. He's just so fucking insufferable. Like every time I call him out, it's completely sincere. I just find that guy to be a huge piece of shit.
Principles are cheating. If you have principles to guide your beliefs, that's just like a mental shortcut that you use to not take every situation on its own unique, novel like quality. You're just cheating. And that's Diavash. He's out there. He takes every situation as it comes. He doesn't need principles. He doesn't need the crutch of principles.
He doesn't. He also he doesn't need like memory. He doesn't need.
Consistent about some things. Like there's an alliance between all big businesses and the SJWs
and Muslims.
Their biggest power center in the world is that sort of axis between those groups.
Mm-hmm.
That's a consistent principle of his
social
thought.
Justice is bad because it's like a religion, but we should also return to religion, which have deviated us towards social justice.
Well, no, social justice is good, but it peaked in 2005. That was when that was when everyone got their rights. Was 2005, and then since then has been going too far. We don't exactly know what's too far.
Too far is transgender rights. He's a huge transphobe.
Dyed armpit hair.
Oh no, but literally, like a lot of the stuff that bothers him is like literally just like purely cosmetic. He's like, women have septum piercings, and they're like moving away from. That means they're moving away from traditional gender roles.
Degenerate.
Like, yes, it's degenerate.
He has a weird like obsession with just like physical aesthetics, like to a point where he just totally misses any sort of like underlying politics or any content to those aesthetics. It's just, I don't like the way this looks, therefore it's wrong.
Yeah.
Does that not seem highly predictable for somebody who sounds like they spend a ton of time on social media? Like, I just feel like if you are on social media, you are going to be noticing a lot of things that are aesthetic about women.
I think that's exactly what it is. I think and that's
And like maybe he doesn't have conversations with women very often, so he's only has the septum piercings and the blue armpit hair to work off of. He's like having a conversation with the armpit hair, with the images.
Well, and his main experience with women is through screenshots on cringe-based forums.
He's feminist, yeah.
What you just said made me cringe.
Yeah, those are people out there like that.
Don't you mean feminazis?
Never mind.
Femoids.
Sorry, were you saying
Yeah,
something?
anyways, for anybody who has the patience to argue with people like that, good on you. But my time is more valuable than that.
Are you saying you don't want us to add you to smart versus dumb?
You could probably add me, and I would probably end up spending too much time in there.
I don't have the patience. I just feel like I'm really close to making him change his mind. I just need to keep doing what I'm doing.
Just on the brink, always on that brink. Yeah.
No, but he started liking my posts in other threads. I think he's like trying to, I don't know.
But like he's been doing that to me for a while too. It's like when I phrase an argument that I legitimately hold in a way that could be construed to like vaguely support some nonsensical notion that he tries to throw out there, then he'll throw you a like. He'll happily do that. But then when you're like actually, you know, stating your principles in a manner that he finds distasteful, then he won't give you that like. He'll chew you out about, you know, being a cultural Marxist, SJW, Zionist shill.
Oh, by the way, does everyone know that I managed to talk on Skype to Anaf? Who knows who Anaf is?
What?
Yeah. I had him on Skype from like years ago because I was trying to get him to, because for people who don't know Anaf, he was like this extreme reactionary, used to argue with in DC too, like we all did. But he had a particular hatred for me because he saw me as like this like virtue signaling white knight cuck.
Called you child fucker Voulier.
He called me child fucker a lot.
And then moron Eris, of course.
Yeah, I thought that was a little far, but so I had him on Skype, and I had him on Skype, and like randomly called him out of the blue, and he picked up, and I talked to him for like 20 minutes, and he talks the same way in real life. He's absolutely a real life lunatic. It's not an act. He is.
What does his voice sound like?
Well, he's got like a like it's Bangladeshi, right?
Yeah, it sounded more normal than I thought it would. I don't know what that means, but Sean had he was playing me bits of the recording. It was amazing.
So he's got like a Bangladeshi Canadian accent, and he is got a slightly high pitched voice. And he mostly said a lot of stuff to me that I know that he got from Jordan Peterson, that call. And then later he told me on Facebook chat that he was converting back to being a Muslim and that he was no longer an atheist. Apparently he's from a Muslim family. I don't know if he was trolling me or what, but at the time I actually got the vibe that he was seriously switching to the Muslim religion, which is crazy because the whole reason that he called me child fucker is because he accused me of supporting Islamists having child brides because I guess I insufficiently criticized them or something.
I mean, like I can't say I blame him though. I have I have a Bangladeshi friend. I'm sorry, is somebody else talking?
You can't blame him for what?
Oh yeah, I can't blame him for, you know, converting back. Even I don't know because I have a Bangladeshi friend who is an atheist himself, and apparently, like in Bangladesh, they're not too fond of atheists. So, like I guess there's been some killings, some like targeted killings of prominent atheists in that country. So I can't imagine that his family would have very much approved of that if they're of the traditional type.
That's shitty.
Yeah.
There's also been just a wave of like far right reactionary types who were super, super anti-Muslim just converting to Islam.
Yeah, like the Adam Waffen guy.
Well, there was the Adam Waffen guy. There was a politician in, I think, Germany.
Yeah, it was an AfD politician who converted to Islam.
Yeah. And like even in like that's where you get that like white Sharia nonsense from people who like fetishize the like hyper masculine and hyper traditionalist and hyper conservative aspects of Islam, and then like initially point to it and go, ew, gross, I don't like that, but it's only because they like really want that. And
well, as Edward Miller says, it's time to join the winning team. You know, they're already taking over the world. So if you already lean in that direction, you might as well get on board with them.
And like, and for like reactionary types, it's totally consistent because they view Islam as solely a force of reaction and conservatism. But so it's like, well, you know, all of those values are things that I hold. Might as well join up.
I kind of respect. Well, maybe that's the wrong word, but that person in Smart versus Dumb, I think her name is Amanda or Tracy or whatever.
Tracy. Yeah, Tracy Manda. Yeah.
Yeah, where she described herself as it was like a long string of hyphenated things, but like a Benedict optionist, some other stuff, third worldist, crypto matriarchal patriarchalist. Which I took to mean that she wants to like ally with reactionary forces in the third world to like sort of encircle the first world's like progressive forces, and like, you know, an alliance between like mainline conservative Sunni Islam and like conservative Christianity in Africa, along with their like a vanguard in the West. I've never seen that before. And I kind of like, at least she's like taking it to its logical conclusion. I know that you hate her because she's a reactionary, but she's kind of like, she's like a Brian Ketterer type figure to me, where she's just like this internet oddity that I find fascinating to like watch.
Something I like about her is
reactionary shit, kind of like Nation of Islam in America, where it's like they're uniting with KKK and anti-Semitic groups just purely out of reactionary conservatism and not really a coherent or, you know, consistent ideological.
Reactionary conservative. It's reactionary conservatism and what?
Sorry, I cut you off.
It's reactionary conservatism, but also anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Because Nation of Islam, that's one of the reasons why the SPLC tracks Nation of Islam and a lot of like Black nationalist and Black separatist groups, is because with Black nationalism and Black separatism, for a lot of them, there comes explicit anti-Semitism. And it's like all couched in the same sort of like reactionary bullshit as the neo-Nazis and every other like anti-Semitic group.
Yeah.
But if I can just jump on top of that, like piggyback on top of that, it's also about ethno-nationalism, right? It's about the idea that there are people and they deserve their own land, and so they should live one place and you should live somewhere else. So when Nation of Islam met with the KKK to discuss getting a plot of autonomous land in the United States where Black people can have a homeland, they actually had an agreement, which was the idea that people of the African diaspora were not possibly able to be assimilated into American society. And that's the same attitude that Zionists have, which is the same attitude that Nazi Germany had, this idea that Jews are not assimilatable.
And they teamed up too. The Nazi Germany and a coalition of Zionist Jews during Nazi Germany, like basically made a pact that they were going to provide support to create like a Jewish state if they could just get the fuck out of Germany.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the like pact or treaty or whatever, but you can find if you Wikipedia it, you can find it.
And those who didn't leave, they deserved it.
Right.
They had a warning.
I don't know if the camera caught my eye roll, but
I rolled.
Isaac being Jewish is really important to that joke landing. So.
I know. I wanted to keep it ambiguous.
With the name Isaac.
My name's fucking Isaac Schwartz. If there's any ambiguity there.
This is a nice tie back to the whole "what are you reading" thing. I'm still like slogging, because I'm horrible at reading books. I'm still slogging through Alexander Reed Ross's Against the Fascist Creep.
Oh man, that's a fucking trek right there.
It's so good though.
He's so dense.
It's so dense, and like in typical like Alexander Reed Ross fashion, it's just like, you know, almost like an information dump, and you just kind of have to sift through it yourself. But it's so good. I think I talked to either you or Hugh about this. So Alexander Reed Ross recently put out an article on the SPLC website that named a couple like left/center left/left liberal folks as unwittingly allying with like outright fascists, and like the fascist conservative movement that's coming out of Russia under Dugin. Or is it Dugin or Dugin? I don't know.
I've heard Dugin, but probably
okay. Yeah, Dugin sounds like French, and it just got so much blowback. It's gotten like just blown up over it because how dare like leftists unwittingly ally with fascists, because they read it as like, oh, you're saying that we're fascists, and that's not true. And I think it's hilarious.
Dugin.
Yeah, it looks like Dugin. Every time he's personally like not that clear in his writing, and like you could read the stuff he reads that way if you weren't reading carefully because it's so info dumpy. But like if you read it carefully, he never calls anyone a fascist. But literally, no matter who he comes for, where he's like, you have overlaps, and everybody does. They're always like, oh, you know, you're calling us a fascist, Alexander Reed Ross, a liar, blah blah blah. Like, I never known someone to like cause so many controversies, which is like, it makes sense because his whole thing is investigating fascism on the left.
Yeah. And like when I was talking to you about it, you made a good point in that, like, didn't you say that he was one of the first people that kind of uncovered the like fascist tendencies in the Earth First movement?
No, so to be clear, he's not that old, because actually when Earth First started, it had some kind of crypto-fascist tendencies in it, and they kicked those guys out long before Sasha moved to the Pacific Northwest. Okay. I just think that even though they're not in Earth First, they're in the kind of like environmental movement in the Pacific Northwest, fascist.
Yeah.
Like in other places.
I can't remember what I was going to say.
We got to get going pretty soon. I was just thinking we could probably, I think I could just leave this open, like turn off our thing if you guys want to keep talking after we leave. But we like maybe 5-10 more minutes. We're going to record the next episode. We're starting working on the finale for the season. We're going to wrap up at 150. What did you say? Well, ask if there was wrong.
We like to, in sort of finales, like bring back old elements and like sort of tie old things together, like concepts that like run through the show that are important. So like in episode 50, we tried to like invert a bunch of stuff from episode 1, and just stuff like that. And so the finale we're working on is also ties to some like the plot strands of Wrongtown, and so I want to sort of like reiterate some like old themes and premises, or like things that sort of define the unique Seriously Wrong like podcast universe. Like, what things do we take for granted? So I want to put stuff like like talking about the meta-monetist idea of like ideological allergies. And like the name Nothing Master we want to bring back. It's like from episode 14 or something. And I was wondering if people had any sort of feedback on things along those lines they'd like to see reflected, like understanding that framing of what I wanted to be able to do.
I felt like it's hard to say like what themes like unite different episodes, because sometimes you'll do these like one-off episodes that are just about like the ear or like or sleep or something, and those, it's sort of like the X-Files, how there's episodes that relate to like the larger plot, and then there's just Monster of the Week episodes. And I feel like the ones I remember the most distinctly are the Monster of the Week episodes. Now I'm talking about your show. This is kind of minor. I want a return of the naked man who's just like roaming and like walking.
Oh yeah. That was a father-son I can't remember why he was naked. I remember him being arrested.
It had something to do with liberatory politics for sure.
Yeah,
In the
we'll
last
find it.
episode, he kind of came back when y'all went skinny dipping.
Sean's just so comfortable with his body, so
That's really awesome.
It's a gift.
Definition wobble comes up quite a bit.
Oh yeah, that's a good one to.
Here's a question: have you guys seen anybody's politics change over the season? Like fans or people who have been listening to the podcast?
Oh well, Callum for sure. The former fascist we had on, he's headed in a good direction. He's still got some stuff, but he's improved. He's greatly improved, and I know that he listens to the show also.
I feel like being able to connect like people whose attitudes have maybe changed about things over the course of the season would be kind of neat, but like I don't know how often that happens necessarily, or how long people stay around for if their opinions change.
Right. Yeah.
We do like I can think of a handful of times where people have indicated that we've changed their mind on something specific, but I don't. And there's people that I suspect. Oh no, there was that one, I can't remember his name. There's one guy who's really emphasized to us more than once that like between us and ContraPoints, he avoided going to the alt-right, like because so there's one example of that I can think of that I feel like is like a benefit, like a proud transformation, and like he's very proud of it, and he's told us more than once.
Who's that?
Has anyone turned into a fascist in response to you guys?
Arguably enough.
Oh, we turned him Muslim?
No, I think we might have turned enough fascist in the first place because he hated us before he was a fascist, and his parody of the left would often sort of seem like it would fluctuate between a parody of the left and like a parody of us specifically. I've always wondered if his hatred for us helped embolden his traditionalist fascist bullshit. But his hate love of us, his hate love. He's very effective.
I would love.
What was that?
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt you, but this was a question I was asking of everyone for a long time, like what their favorite school of Islamic jurisprudence is, and I wish that you could have asked Anaf that.
It's still good.
Yeah, I really he does want to talk more in the future. I think we're really starting a budding
dialogue.
Yeah.
A healing dialogue.
I personally don't have a favorite Islamic jurisprudence, to be honest.
How can you pick?
I love Max Wojnowski or Wojnowski. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name.
Yeah,
gave a stunningly like just exquisite answer where he was like, "My favorite school is Hanafi because it says it's okay to beat off if it keeps you from doing something more sinful." So far, that's the great answer I've gotten. I don't know. If you're doing, it's not a finale to the whole show, right? You're gonna come out.
No, just season. It would probably be a short break, but we're not even really planning to stop. We're planning to do video stuff, and we're planning to keep making episodes. But
yeah, so typically we've taken like in between a 1 and 2 month break between like seasons to recharge. But now we're gonna do sort of a 1 or 2 month sort of break where we just release less episodes, but we're probably going to have only a couple weeks in between the finale and the next episode that we do.
Okay. Please do one on schools of jurisprudence.
I still think y'all should do one on hate, just the concept of hate. Like kind of in the same way that y'all did like the ear and then the other one. Because I really want to see a dialogue between like someone who's just very open and very accepting, and then someone who says that they hate and just kind of playing off of that whole concept of like hating hate, but then taking it in a really like bizarre and weird direction. I don't know. I was thinking about it a while ago, and I can't really like, I've been like riding a migraine all day, so I can't put together like my thoughts on it.
I think that's a very rich vein. And I was the person who suggested creativity. And I think in the same vein as creativity, you could look at hate as like an emotional experience. You could look at it as like an active intellectual position that you take in relation to something else. Like there's a lot of senses in which that word is deployed, and in which one can hate. I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I like that too.
I wrote it on my notes. I think it's a good one.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a meme floating around like today and yesterday that was like you talking to a friend and all of your friends are, you know, like, I don't know, just like a diversity of like opinions and sexual preferences and stuff. And then it's like, what about conservative friends? And it's like, I guess they're okay. If they keep their beliefs in the closet, then I'm okay with them. So that really speaks to that.
You guys do one on consensus already?
What's that?
Did you do one on consensus?
Ooh.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I think that would be really funny considering your respective. Were you both at a different Occupy? I forget.
Yeah, I was pretty hardcore into Occupy Winnipeg, but Aaron was a visitor to Occupy Vancouver.
Yeah, I went like once a week on the weekends. Check it out.
You don't need to downplay that. That's like a pretty good rate of showing up.
Yeah, better than those motherfuckers.
As long as you didn't just show up to block things and then leave without defending your block.
Oh no, I only went to like one actual, like, what did they call those, general meetings or whatever? It was torture. I couldn't stand it. And I just mostly went to like the rallies when there was people on stages and stuff. And and we were handing out like zeitgeist shit too, pamphlets.
Aaron took a bunch of pictures of like the campsites where people were living and then blogged about how they were dirty and filthy and how someone needed to clean them up.
Yeah, it was gross. Those disgusting homeless people.
What a hateful
animals, really. Barely even human.
Oh, you're quoting my blog, huh?
Feel so trolled by this.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna go off. Do you guys want us to just leave this on? Do you guys still want to talk to each other?
Well, the internet person just joined the call.
Oh yeah, who is that? I can't see who that is.
Who are you, internet person?
Nope.
Yes, he's muted.
I gotta go anyway. I have a doctor's appointment. I'll see you guys.
Take care.
Bye, Morgan.
Bye.
Take care. Get well.
Oh, it's People of the Internet. That's James Stewart. People of the Internet.
Oh yeah.
You got here late. People.
Yeah,
of the
no
Internet.
worries. I was watching on YouTube.
Oh, right. Cool. Yeah, okay. I guess we'll just no one expressed strong preference to stay on after we ended it, so we're gonna shut it down.
Yep.
Guys.
Fair enough.
Thanks for coming out, everyone.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's
That was a good one, guys.
Bye.
That was a humble gesture I did.